Hi guys, this is Michael from the Boardgames Chronicle. Today I have for you another material about Traces of Hubris, which is kind of a spiritual continuation of the Traces of War, a game from VUCA Simulations by Tetsuya Nakamura. The Traces of War was talking about the Russian offensive in 1944 after the Kursk. The Traces of Hubris will be talking about the Fallblau, so Case Blue, the plan of Germans to conquer southern Russia in actually most of the second half of 1942. I already created the kind of a unboxing and overview video for Traces of Hubris. Today, I would like to shortly explain the rules, and the third material in the series, it will be an example of play. So today we'll very briefly go through the rules. I will also point out the differences between Traces of War and Traces of Hubris, where they are, because there are some distinctive ones. And yeah, that will be the plan. I already had a chance to play this game. It's not only beautiful and you have a lot of pleasure from playing it, but it's also very engrossing and gives a lot of fun. And thanks to the cheat pool mechanism, it's perfect for the solitary play. And yeah, what we'll do today and how we'll approach it, I will explain the map, I will explain of course the counters, the sequence of play, we'll zoom at the victory conditions and also at some of the important smaller rules like combat, movement, supply. Very interesting rule about how von Manstein can come from Crimea, for example, and so on and so forth. Yep, so I think without further ado, let us start. The map. As you can see, the map is vast, and when we will be doing the gameplay example or even explaining some of the rules, I will zoom in because you cannot see the details at this moment in time. Believe me, I believe that the map is cut somewhere over here. Yeah, it's like 1/4 still that way. So you have a really broad and wide area of operations, which is good. What is slightly, not good is that it a bit, overlaps my table, but it's like 1.5 centimeters, so I can live with it. Let me put the box to the side, and what we can see on the map. First of all, the map has two parts. This is first map, this is the second map. This is the western direction, north, this is south, and this would be east. This is the line of contact during the June 1942, approximate line of contact, of course, where you have the Axis forces on the western side, all those gray ones, and you have the Soviet forces on the eastern side, all those browny yellow ones. What you can see here is that there are almost no forces on this map. They will start to appear later on. Other than that, I would like to draw your attention also to the some additional areas around the actual terrain. Here you have the place where you can put your cheats available, inactive, executed. You can put your reinforcements there and stuff like this. The Soviets have it on the other side, although I actually prefer the display, which is presented only for the solitary purposes, but for me it's perfect one also for the two-player game, where you have Soviet reinforcements here, Axis here, you will have victory points and the reinforcements number chart here, rail transfer box, all the stuff connected to the Luftwaffe. The most important part are the inactive and executed, let's say, cheats for the Soviets and for the Germans, and also the turn tag. So everything in very concise way in one area. So I'm usually not using those things on the map. I rather prefer to use this. Okay, I believe we should, before we zoom in on the map, I would just like to draw your attention, as long as you can see it, to key victory areas for Germans. I will explain victory conditions later on. Now only with regards to map. There are cities usually, or places, which look like this, with a double red, let's say, border. These are the victory spaces for Germans. There are like 11 of them. Unfortunately, you cannot see all of them, but let me explain. Rostov is here. Voronezh is here. We have one supply source here. There's another one here. There is Saratov over there. Stalingrad is over here, 2 spaces. And on the southern map, you would have another 4. You will have Maikop, then you will have a supply source over there. And here, down in Caucasus, you have 2, Grozny and Makhachkala. So in total, 11 of them. Now, let me pause for a bit. I will do a zoom in so we can see the features of the map. One more thing, on the Soviet side, on the German side, you have also several of those important victory points. You have Stalino, you have Kharkov, you have Belgorod, and you have Kursk. So like 4 of them already in the hands of the Germans. Okay, so let's zoom in and we'll continue in a moment. Okay, let me continue with the map. Initial part of the game anyhow takes place mainly on this part of the northern map, let's say 25% of the total area. Then later, as the turns progress, it spreads farther and farther to the east. About the map, we have a very good player rate. This is something fantastic from VUCA simulations. I always appreciate it very much. So these are the sturdy, player aids, and you have a very nice explanation of all the terrain features which we'll have here. We have a clear terrain. You can see it, clearly. Let's say we have a rough terrain, which is here. It will have impact for the non-mechanized units movement, 2 movement points instead of 1, and also the column ship during the combat. We'll have swamps. They should be next to Rostov, for example. So we have some swamps here, We also have an impact on the movement both of mechanized and non-mechanized units and the combat effects. We have several types of cities and towns. This is example of a major city. We have also, I believe, Voronezh as a major city. They have no impact on the movement, but they have 2 column ships during the combat. We have also towns. This is example of a town. And we might also have towns in the rough terrain. I'm not sure if I can find quickly one of them, but it will be simply town on this type of terrain. Farther to the east, we'll have like that. In the south, so not on this map, we will have mountain hexes. And there will be some special conditions where you can enter the mountain hex. There will be also mountain, let's say, divisions, which will have it easier. I believe this is one of the mountain divisions, to enter the mountain hex. There will be coastal hexes, which you can enter, and there will be a water hexes, which you cannot enter. And of course, we will have roads and railroad lines. So these are the roads, these are the railroad lines, and there is no differentiation between, major road, minor road. No, you simply have only one type of road. At the edges of the map, you will see such symbols. This represents the supply sources. This is supply source for the Axis. This is supply source for the Soviets. This is how does it look like. And these are the main features of the map. There are of course also rivers, 2 types of rivers, minor rivers and major. Dniestr, Volga, Don would be major rivers, and there is several of minor. They have 2 impacts, of course. First of movement, there is a severe movement penalty for major rivers because you need to be adjacent to it to cross it, and There cannot be, just like in traces of war, enemy zone of control in both of them, because then you will not be able to cross them. For the minor rivers, it's just one additional movement point, and yeah, that's all. However, they have a severe impact on the combat because they halve the combat strength. Okay, I believe that will be all for the map discussion. Let me now jump to the next. Let me tell you now about the setup. The setup is not rigid. To some extent, it is flexible. You have areas of deployment where you can actually deploy the particular forces. First of all, the more I would say, inflexible part of the setup are the frontline units of the Soviets. So all those units, these are, the infantry divisions. There's a marker which shows where they should be set up. This marker is here, and it shows with light gray units of the Soviets should be set up here. On the other hand, you have also the dark gray units. So this one, this one, this one. There are 7 of them, and those 7 you can set up in towns and cities as a second line of defense. I put them in Voronezh here to strengthen this approach, here to check the Don, here. This already shows you that each game can start differently, because the Soviet player can put the second line defense units differently than in the previous game. Then you have a setup of the, let's say, HQs, so headquarters. You can see that there is a symbol of headquarter, and for example, the 17th German army is set up here. Here we'll have 3rd Romanian army, which is set up here. Here we have 6th army, German army. Here you have a 4th Panzer army. So yeah, this is clearly visible where the headquarters come. Similar for the Russians. Yeah, you can see the symbol here. Now, each of the formations on the I would say Axis side. So you have 17th Army, you have Italian 8th Army, you have Romanian 3rd Army, you have 6th German Army, you have 2nd Hungarian, and you have 4th Panzer. Each of them has area of deployment where they put all their units. At the beginning of the game, the color, which you can see here on the headquarters, and the color of the units it actually commands, is the same. Then during the game, it's very important, something which raises a lot of questions, whether during the game I can command with a pink headquarter only pink units. No, you will be able to command all the units in your area of command. Full stop, period, regardless of the color. But in the beginning, at the beginning of the setup, if you look at the range, which is 4, you will see that the only German units who can be commanded by this pink unit are the pink units. It's not by coincidence, of course. And they are being set up in those pink areas. There has to be at least 1 unit there. And now again, this is up to you, Axis player, how you put your most important units, like those very heavy tanks. I put them on the northern flank with the hope of breakthrough here, or how you put the tanks of a 6th Army, or how you will put the tanks of a 1st Panzer Army, very strong army. Yeah. And of course, that is why the tank went here, because from the Soviet reinforcements to be able to counter that. So as you can see, during the setup, while you have the areas of setup defined, and you can put the units only there, you have a huge flexibility of how to do it. And this really creates a very interesting situation each time I'm starting to play it. Especially taking into account a special first turn, let's say, rule. I will be telling about this also in the sequence of play, that you, as a German player, can choose one of the formations and activate it before the game move and attack. So you can really plan it nicely what will happen. I think that will be all for the setup. Let's jump to the next section. We'll talk now about the counters and the information we have on the counters. As you can see, the colors you already know. The gray are the axes, the yellow, brownish are the Soviets. But what do we have on the counters? Let me now zoom on them. You can see the examples of two mechanized counters and two non-mechanized counters. First of all, you have the name of a counter, which is simply for the flavor purposes. Then to the right down, you see the movement allowance. The German tank has 10, the Soviet tank has 6. This is the Soviet cavalry with 5, and the German infantry. It's actually not German, it's Romanian infantry with 5. Then you have attack defense values. This is both attack and defense for the non-mechanized units. The mechanized units will have a separate value for the attack, 8, and separate for the defense, which is 4. So mechanized units usually will be much better in attack. And as you can see, these are not overly complicated units. They definitely show nicely all the needed information on them. Are those the only units? Of course not. Let me just put them back and show you some more. And as you can see, this German tank has no color indication like those tanks. That means it will come in reinforcements and will be managed, commanded by the HQ. It is, in range of which it is. Then we have, let me show you example of some of the counters which are being used during the game. So these counters will be drawn from the cap to see who will be activated at a particular moment. These are the examples of the formation HQ. 4th Panzer Army, 1st Panzer Army, Voronezh Front, Southwestern Front. We have a supply counter which when drawn from the cap will be forcing us to check the supply and do some other stuff. OKH, this will allow us to activate one of the German formations. Axis reinforcements, unlike traces of war, here the axis reinforcements has its own counter, but you will be rolling to see what you actually get. We should have also the Soviet reinforcements. I have them handy somewhere over here. And Stavka, which allows you to, like OKH, activate any formation. So I have Stavka here. Yeah, you should see it. And where do I have reinforcements? I believe I should have them somewhere handy, but if I don't, I will. By the way, the Soviet reinforcements does not have a counter because they will happen during the supply phase. You will be actually automatically, putting them on the map. Okay, so this is all about the counters. There are some additional ones which I can briefly mention. So there are the Luftwaffe ones, 2 types of them, depending on what you would like to do. Let me just take, So these are the Luftwaffe counters. The back of them is always the same, Luftwaffe. However, the other side is either air supply or offensive attack modifier, 2 shifts right. You can only have like 1/3 of your total available as air supply. And at the beginning of the turn, you will be rolling during the Luftwaffe reorganization phase to see how many you will actually get. Pretty cool mechanics to show it. And there are some additional counters like ones which shows victory points for tracking the turn, for the fortifications of the Soviets which they can create. Yeah, again, victory points. We also are getting 2 tokens which will be showing us actually the range from which the headquarter was activated. Because, for example, if, I don't know, this headquarter activates, it can activate all the units with a range of 4, but it also activates itself. So it can move first, and then you will not remember which units were activated. So you put simply this here, and you can move this unit, wherever you want, and you remember till the end of activation, okay, this was where the source of activation was. Pretty cool thing, and they actually printed this also for Traces of War, so you can use it also with Traces of War. The range was different there, I believe 6, it is 4 here, so that is why you need a different set of counters. Okay, that's all for the counters. Let's talk now about the sequence of play, because this is the coolest thing. So, the game is played over the 9 turns. Those turns are nicely stipulated here, from turn 1 to turn 9. It also has indication which part of the year it was. We start from June, we have 2 turns in July and August, and one till December. During each turn, there will be different number of cheats which each side has. For example, in June, Germans will be able to put in a secret way 4 tokens, for counters to activate their units. There is no Axis minors activated, there is no Axis reinforcements or OKH. The Soviets will have 3 units and 1 as a reinforcement or Stavka. It shows the special things which are happening during those turns, and the number, of course, changes from turn to turn. I told you that I love player aids from VUCA Simulation because they have almost all the information you need to play the game. Let's talk about the sequence of play. I told you that turn 1 has a special rule, so before actually the game and the cheat selection phase, the Germans, the Axis side, can activate one of HQs. You move, you fight, and then you start the game. Sequence of play. First we have Luftwaffe reorganization phase. In this phase, the Axis player will roll a die on the Luftwaffe table to see how much planes they will get. This is the Luftwaffe table. You can see that depending on the turn and depending on the roll, you can have different number of the tokens. This is the total number of the tokens from 5 to 9, and the second number is the maximum you can use as an air supply. So you can see that it gradually deteriorates. Important factor, this choice, okay, it's turn 1, I rolled 3, so I have 7 tokens, 3 of the maximum air supply. The interesting thing is that the Axis player does it secretly, so the Soviet player does not know how much the opponent invests in supplying the rapidly advancing forces or how much in the actual combat support. Then you have combat cheat selection phase, so each of the sides again secretly chooses this number of cheats which are shown here, and then puts the rest here to the inactive pile, but with a reverse up. So opponent does not know which cheats were selected. That's very, very important and creates kind of a fog of war. Who will be moving? And then we have action phase. We'll be drawing the cheats one by one, and depending on the type of a cheat, some things will be happening. When we finish drawing the cheats, we go to the turn end phase. Then we check whether the victory was achieved. If not, we advance the turn to the next phase. Now, I told you about, sequence of play, but it has action phase. What kind of actions will it have? First of all, we'll have HQ command cheat. So the most common thing which can happen, these were just a reminder, those cheats, like 4th Panzer Army, Southern Front. That means which HQ is being activated, and all units within its range can be activated. There's one minor special rule for the Germans, because in Soviet case it's straightforward. I activate this, and all the units with a range of 6 I can move and then combat. You remember that we have minors, so we have Hungary, we have Romania, and we have Italy. So if German HQ is activated, like 6th Army or here 4th Panzer Army, they are not allowed to activate the minors. On the other hand, when the minor HQ activates, like Hungarians, they activate all their units, but also up to 2 German units. So as I said, this is move and combat. Supply cheat. Supply cheat is something which triggers a lot of stuff which will be happening. We'll talk about it separately. You can see there is like 5 of them. Soviet reinforcements cheat. Okay, they have reinforcement cheat. I'm not sure why I thought that they don't have it, and I simply put it somewhere aside. Ha! Found it. Now I have it, sorry. Oh, now you should see it. I found it. I thought that it's during the supply phase, but no, sorry for this. It's simply during the action phase when you draw the cheat. Axis reinforcements, as I told you, this is something new. And let's look at the reinforcements. They are here and here. We'll talk about how they are being, done in a moment. Then we have Stavka, which allows to activate one of the units, one of the formations of the Russians, and H, which allows you to activate one of the units on the German side. Some of the armies will have 2 activation cheats. So with OKH, for example, 4th Panzer Army, this unit can be activated even up to 3 times during the turn, 2 times from their own cheats and 1 from OKH. That can allow for a pretty huge breakthrough, and the Soviet players should be aware of this, of course. Okay, so that will be all about the sequence of play. Let us move on. We talk now about the victory conditions in the Traces of Hubris. They are, of course, very nicely described on the player 8 here in the victory side. However, I would like to summarize them a bit. First of all, you remember that we have those special areas, axis target hexes, which I mentioned to you. They control, like at the beginning of the game, we have Stalino, we have Kharkiv, we have Belgorod, and we have Kursk. They will win the game if at the end of the turn, during the, it was called victory determination phase, so this phase here, if they control at least 9 of those hexes. And it's not so easy to win them, although there's plethora of options on the huge map, because you have here Stalingrad for 2, you have Saratov, you have at least 2 supply sources further here. You have, of course, Grozny, Maikop, you have Makhachkala, you have supply source to the south. There are options. However, you need to focus, probably as an Axis player, on some of them in order to be able to really get to them. What happens if at the end of a turn 9, so here nobody has, so the automatic victory has not occurred, then you will need to calculate VPs, and here we have a description how it's being calculated. If the Axis VPs are higher than 15, the game will end in a draw. If the VPs will be 15 or lower, the game ends in a Soviet victory. How do we calculate it? Okay. The Axis player wins 1 VP per each Axis target hex beyond 4 under Axis control and able to try supply. So they simply earn victory points for getting new areas, not those 4, but the new ones. And they will be losing those based on the lost units during the combat. 5 for the HQ, 5 also for the Viking SS mechanized units. This is a unit which is not at the onset of the game on the map. I should have it somewhere here. This is a pretty decent unit. Let me Okay, you should see it now. It's a pretty good unit. Then 4 for each mechanized unit, 2 for each non-mechanized, and minors are worth 0. So honestly, if you go to the turn 9, it's very, very rare that the Axis can achieve, any good result. So they need to get to those control points as soon possible, and don't wait actually for the Victorian points. They need to get Stalingrad. Most probably Voronezh is for the taking. Historically they took Voronezh. Rostov is also for the taking. So actually after Rostov and Voronezh, those two, you need to decide whether to go maybe more this direction. It has not happened historically, or more that direction, which historically of course happened, and we know very well how it finished. So these are the victory conditions. Now we'll talk about some more additional detailed rules, and we will wrap up. Okay, let me tell you a bit about some smaller rules which are anyhow very important. First of all, during the activation of HQ, we'll have the movement of the units. Yeah, I told you already about the movement, allocation, like 5 for the infantry of the Axis, 4 of the Soviets, tanks has 10, the Soviet has 6. Okay. The important thing is how the zones of control are resolved here in this game. They are not fixed, they are flexible, but you will need to spend the points in order to actually enter them and leave them. So let us have a look first of all on this. So all the movement cost for the terrains are explained here very nicely. Usually it's somehow increased for some of them, because in the rough terrain it takes more time to move, in swamp, in towns in the rough hexes, so on. But the zone of controls are one of the most interesting, and yeah, they are even described here. I told you can find everything on this player 8. Yeah, so the zone of control is of course 6 surrounding hexes, and they extend across all minor and major river hexes, something which is not obvious in all of the games. They do not extend across the water hexes, and we have some of the water hexes, like here next to the Rostov. They affect, of course, supply lines, movement, retreat, and reinforcements placement. Now, I told you that they are not fixed and that you can actually move within the zone of control. That's true because it costs 2 movement points to enter zone of control and 2 movement points to exit it. So for example, let me do a demonstration here. If we have such a situation, I hope that you can see it clearly. If we have, maybe a bit here will be better. If you have such situation, if this unit wants to move here, it costs him not 1 but 3 because he exits the zone of control. The stacking, by the way, are 2 units plus HQ. This is important also for this example of the movement. If he wants to move from here to here, that will cost him 5. 1 because of a clear terrain, plus 2 because he leaves this enemy zone of control, and plus 2 because he enters a new zone of control. So this is 5. For him to move from here to here, it's also 5, but of course he cannot move here because he has only 4 points. And actually you will learn during the game that it has a profound impact on the ability of both sides to move. Those 10 points of the Panzer unit is really superb value. This 6 points of the, let's say, Soviet tank is unfortunately not so good, but there will be many more of them, so they will simply have advantage with the numbers. And this is especially visible when you compare the infantry, because in such situation, when you have 2 infantry, and let's say that the Germans want to break the contact with the Soviets, they move 3, 4, 5. Are the Soviets able to catch to them? No, because they move 1, 2, and they don't have enough points. They need another 3 points to enter here. So it's pretty easy for the German infantry to disengage. Let's try the other way around. Let's say, okay, the Russians now want to disengage. They move 3, 4. Can they catch up? Of course they can. They move 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see that it's possible for the German infantry to escape the, let's say, Soviet infantry, but not vice versa. So this is the movement example. Next example is, of course, combat. How do we resolve the combat? There is again a pretty detailed instruction about the combat and so on. You can see it here in the movement, below the movement. Let me just tell you this. This works in a pretty regular way. So you can only attack particular hex once per turn. Each unit can only attack once per turn. You can combine attack from several hexes into one hex. You cannot attack 2 hexes at the same time, but you can split the attack from one hex to 2 directions. All this stuff which you know from Traces of War or other let's say hex encounter games. Important thing is about the rounding, because in the rounding you always round down. And let's do maybe some example of a battle. Let's assume that those 2 units will attack this unit. What they can do, if they have still available, they can use 1 Luftwaffe counter for the battle, maximum 3 per turn. They calculate the odds. So this is 8 plus 3, 11 to 2. 11 to 2 will be 5 to 1. Having 5 to 1, they cross-check the combat resolution table, which is here. We see I will be rolling somewhere here. What do we see in this combat resolution table? We see first of all R, which means retreat of a 1 hex, RR, retreat of 2 hexes. With those values here is the number of the losses of the defender. A means retreat of the attacker, with a number, of course, of the losses also of the attacker. Now, let us assume it was 5 to 1. I was not using Luftwaffe. I thought, wow, I have such a good odds, I will not use it. So it's 5 to 1, and let us assume I rolled well, and I rolled RR1, so 5. What happens then? If I rolled RR1, first of all, this unit takes 1 hit and has to escape 2 hexes, preferably towards the supply source. Let's assume here is its supply source, so it moves once too. What the attacker can do, they can always enter this hex, and the mechanized units, if it's clear hex, and this was a clear hex, so both hexes are clear, I believe this is a correct interpretation of the rules, they can move 1 more hex, and it does not have to be the one where this unit was escaping. So this tank can move here, here, here. Let us assume they move here. The non-mechanized unit cannot execute a 2 hex advance after combat, and this is of course also described here. Clear, special rule, mechanized units may advance a 2nd hex if the 2nd hex is clear. Sorry, so the 1st hex doesn't have to be clear, the 2nd hex has to be clear. So this is possible to be done. And now one more small rule: supply. The supply is very important in the game. You need to be able to trace the supply from the supply hexes. And when you draw the supply sheet, so that one, you will be checking it. Actually, you will be checking tons of things during the supply sheet drawing. First of all, supply. Both players check the supply status of all their units simultaneously. They need to check if they can trace it to their supply sources. I want to double check one thing. Yeah, so you need to be maximum 6 hexes from your supply line or from the railroad, which can bring you supply, and 6 hexes from the railroad. So, for example, I don't know, this unit Let me show you some example. Let us assume that there is this unit here. He has supply because the supply can come from here via railway, and then from the railway 1, 2, 3 hexes to it. So the railways are very critical and important for bringing the supply, and both sides does it simultaneously. So if somebody dies, they die because of lack of a supply, because you will be flipping the unit, then you do it simultaneously. Then Axis rolls for Operation Blue Hair. I will tell about it from the third turn. So possibility of Meilenstein finally getting rid of a Sevastopol fortress and helping the fall blow. Historically, very few forces entered, yeah, through the strait, Kerch Strait, I believe. But in this game, it can be much more when the Germans rolls on the German withdrawal table. Yes, during the supply, we'll be rolling here and we'll see how many infantry and panzer units will be moved to another front. The fourth thing is Axis may do the rail transfer. This is a cool thing. If the unit is not in the zone of control, but it's on the railway, you can put them in transfer, and during the next supply turn, you can unpack them also on the railway without, enemy zone of control. This is very helpful for the long range, movement of the units. I really like this rule and believe it's a good addition to the system. I don't believe it was in the Traces of War. Last but not least, Soviets may do fortification construction. So this is something which they can construct in cities. It takes 2 turns or not 2 turns, I would say 2 supply phases to have it fully built. This is first phase 0, 0, and then you have 0, 1, so nothing in attack, but +1 in defense. And what is more, it has 2 steps. This is 1 step, this is 2 steps, and it allows you to convert each and every retreat result into the loss. So that way you can really nicely, soak up some damage, like in Rostov or Stalingrad. There are only 2 tokens during the game, and once they are destroyed, you cannot rebuild them. And last thing which I wanted to tell you about is, of course, Operation Blue Hair. So the 11th Army under Erich von Manstein can support the attack, can support in the south, and can be really, really decisive. From turn 3, we roll a die. If we roll 6, they will enter. If we roll lower than 6, they will not enter. But you can influence it. These are the values of the die roll modifier. From the turn 6 onwards, we will have +1. If we use 3 Luftwaffe markers, simply discard them. We will have +1. If Rostov-on-Don is under Axis control, we have +1. And there are like 3 additional cities or towns, which if we can grab, it will be much more probable that Hitler decides not to send Manstein to Leningrad, but send him here. So if we manage to crash here and then get some of the towns here, it's much easier. So it's again very tempting for the Axis player to focus here, because this is probably the most powerful army, crash here and get Voronezh and then go further. Or on the other hand, maybe we should focus here. What I'm meaning by focusing is using this first attack before the game. The decision is really between the 4th Panzer Army and the 1st Panzer Army. Or maybe I mean, this is this first attack, and then there is another thing when we draw OKH, which allows you to activate one of the units, whether to use it here or here. You need to commit. You need to commit either on Rostov, here to the south, and trying to get Meilenstein as soon as possible, or you can commit here and get to Voronezh and up to the Saratov. Again, historically, they committed here, but they have not brought Meilenstein, so that was probably the worst possible solution. And that was the last rule which I wanted to discuss. I'm just checking my notes if there's anything I would like to touch upon. No, that will be all. So let me just do a brief conclusion. So guys, this was the Traces of War rules explanation. I hope that you now have a good grasp how this game plays. In order to help you with this, I will create one more material in which I will simply show you the example of play. We'll play the first turn, we'll do the initial attack. I'm still not fully decided whether this will be the 4th Panzer Army or maybe 1st Panzer Army. We shall see. And then we'll show how the cheats are being played, the supply, the reinforcements, and other like this. That's all for today. If you like this video, do not hesitate and give a thumbs up. If you like to see more content like this, please subscribe. Every subscription counts for such small content creator like the Board Games Chronicle. That's all for today. I hope you had fun and you will have fun with Traces of Hubris. I really have and can strongly recommend it. Really, really nice and great game. Thank you for being with me today and thank you for watching.